So you might wonder what the LA fish guy is doing all bundled up standing out in the snow. Well, we're here in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We're building a 280-gallon Coral Reef Tank. So here's an idea as to how the filter system will work. You can see there's the big circulation pump here sitting in the cabinet below with union fittings on both in and outlet. They pass through the bottom of the tank. You can see there's the intake strainer for the pump, and then there's the return line, and that comes up and splits into a T that has the sea swirls on it, both at the top of the tank. Then there's the filter below that'll receive its water via the overflow drain line down to the Berlin filter, and then the pump will send it back up into the tank. And you can see no matter how well you plan out things or try to think it out, invariably there's something that you forget or didn't realize you had to bring. And one of the problems is I found I forgot to include one bulkhead, and then turns out there's a second bulkhead that I think they drilled it for a 1-inch bulkhead but supplied me with a 3/4 inch bulkhead. I don't know how well you can see all of this up here, but here's the Durzo. We're gonna take that out for now. And so you can see there's the strainer on the inlet side, and then it'll make an elbow and go down through the bottom of the tank. There's a bulkhead there. That's for the Durzo standpipe. That'll lead down to the Berlin filter. Here's the return line. And unfortunately, they gave us a 3/4 inch bulkhead. And that hole down there, it looks like it's going to take a 1-inch bulkhead. And then there's the other bulkhead, the 1.5, that'll be the return, coming back up from the circulation pump below, and that'll connect ultimately to the sea swirls. Which again, the sea swirls are these units, and there'll be one in this corner and one over in this corner, and I'll have 1-inch pipe running to both of those. So that's where we're at the moment. We're now, I think, going to start cutting some PVC pipe to try to get as much of this together as we can, but unfortunately I won't be able to put water in it when I leave on Monday because I have to come up with those 2 bulkheads. But turns out it's another reason to come back, and the homeowner has already asked me to plan on doing so. So there'll be another trip to Jackson down the road. So as I mentioned, we're going to incorporate those sea swirl units into the application. One will be in this front corner, one will be in the opposite corner. The flow will come from a pipe coming out of the internal overflow, and instead of starting at the bottom of that overflow and coming up and then coming out to where all the pipes are at, I think it would be smarter to start at the sea swirl end, because this is the height that I have to be at. So I'm going to start at this point and work my way back to where the T will be. That way I can make sure the T is the right height. So I'm being told the Grand Tetons are literally right there. They rise up to about 7,000 feet. It's been cloud covered and snow flurries the whole time I've been here, so I've yet to see them. I have realized that one of the things that being from Los Angeles that we don't get a chance to experience is that coldness. And I have to be honest with you, if I was an aquarium service guy in the Midwest or the East Coast where it snows, get your hands wet. They're cold the rest of the day. So I could see that as being a little bit of a problem as a fish guy. So having said that, I think I'm going to go inside and warm up those hands and start finishing the plumbing on the system.
get things moving forward, we've done a mock or a dry setup of the plumbing on one of the sea swirls. You can see here how the discharge end of that unit is below the surface of the water, and it'll shoot its water across the aquarium. But for me to continue on, I need to climb underneath the tank and tighten the bulkheads out of the bottom of the internal overflow. I'll use a large channel lock wrench to do so. I'll tighten them just a hair bit more than snug.
Okay, here's how far we've gotten tonight. Those are the sea swirl units that'll sit at the top of the tank, and they'll be what's creating the random or chaotic water flow. Although you have oscillating discharge nozzles that will move back and forth about 90 degrees via that motorized box. And there's the line. There's a union fitting in there in case someday we have to take it off for service. Over here, there's the T I talked about. And then here again is the second unit. And it too will create random or oscillating currents from one corner of the tank. Again, a union fitting. Notice there's a ball valve there, and the reason for that is the unequal distance between where the water splits off via that T. This being the side that would receive more flow, I want to be able to restrict it just slightly. It also gives me the ability to create a stronger flow maybe off this side for one day and then a weaker flow off that side for one day. The whole point is to keep stuff settled or unsettled in the tank, and the more random and different you can do it, the better off, the less it's going to hide in the tank. There's our internal overflow, and again you can see the T goes down inside the overflow box there. Down there is the intake strainer for that high circulation water pump, and again the T is the discharge side of it. And then we have gotten that 3,600 gallon an hour pump positioned, but partly because of these extra supports in the stand and really that back corner over there, the pump arrived a little bigger than I expected, so I have to make some adjustments, and that'll be here where I'm going to put a pair of 45-degree angle elbows in there that allow me to shift over and not really restrict the flow or reduce the flow that much. Again, union fittings on both inlet and outlet in case that pump has to come out, and at some point I would anticipate it too, because these type of pumps typically within a few years have to have their seals replaced because they begin to leak water. So you can see the circulation side of it is coming along. Now over here is the filter side of it. Again, this is supposed to be a Berlin style filter. So there's those micron socks. This will be where the water comes into the tank, or into the filter from the tank, into those socks, which we'll probably stop using or only use to polish water. They're just a little they hang on to too much debris, and you either have to replace them all the time or be cleaning them all the time. So we may use them just to filter out fine particles in the tank, and then once those fine particles are filtered out, say the day we add sand, then we'll take those socks out. They'll no longer be needed. Being a Berlin style filter, again, there is no wet, dry, or biological aspect down here. It's essentially just a large sump, mainly to hold the protein skimmer. This is a Coral Reef skimmer. There's a big Eheim pump that'll create the aeration in there. I have to admit, one thing I miscalculated was it requires an input source. And I didn't anticipate that. I'm more familiar with their smaller units that use the same pump to supply the water as well as aerate the water. So I'll have to make some adjustments over here on this Iwaki, and it'll be in the form of a T that'll come up about here from the pump, and there'll be a ball valve, and that'll be the feed for the protein skimmer. And then the top half of the T will continue on to the underside of the tank, which will attach via a line inside the overflow and will poke out right there just under the surface in those two discharge nozzles, and that'll just be a more consistent flow as opposed to the sea swirls, which will be at the surface, but they'll be creating the random flow in the tank. So that's the end of day one. There's a couple fittings I miscalculated on, but hopefully there's a hardware store in town that has those fittings. Might be kind of hard to get the bulkhead, so unfortunately, because I also miscalculated on the number of bulkheads needed, I'm one large 1.5-inch bulkhead short, which means that I can't put water in the tank. I can get all the way up to that point, but I can't put water in. So I end up having to send those parts, and MJ, his assistant here, the cabinet guy, he'll probably put them in because he's the one who's most likely going to be doing the maintenance on the tank. So that's our first day.
If I can catch my breath due to the altitude here in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, come on back for part 3 as we assemble the Berlin filter side of the system.